What I'm about to tell you right now is not a mistake. What if I told you that someone earning $100,000 a year is more likely to be living paycheck to paycheck than someone earning $50,000 a year? According to a 2025 report from Lending Club and Payments, nearly 62% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That spans every income level, even people pulling in six figures, even people earning over $200,000. And I kid you not, even people earning over $500,000 a year. So why is this happening? Because if income were the problem, more income would be the solution, right? But clearly that is not how this is working. Today, I want to get into the real reason why so many people, especially people on what should be a comfortable income, are still broke at the end of every month. And more importantly, I want to give you a practical solution out of it. So let me paint this picture for you. You get a raise, maybe a promotion. You're finally making good money. And yet somehow you're still stressed out about your bank account 2 days before payday. You're still putting things on your credit card that you planned to pay off months ago. Still not building any savings. You feel like something is wrong with you, like you're doing something other people are not doing. Like if you just made a little bit more, you would finally get ahead. But here's the uncomfortable truth. More income on its own does not fix it. And the data backs that up completely. And according to a 2025 report from Goldman Sachs, about 40% of people earning $300,000 to $500,000 and 40% of those earning over $500,000 says they are still living paycheck to paycheck. Let that sink in for a moment. We are not talking about people who cannot afford rent. We're talking about people who, by every outward measures, looks financially successful. The nice neighborhoods, the cars, the vacations, and behind the scenes, quietly maxing out credit cards to keep it all going. And now entering 2026, a civic science survey found that 76% of Americans have little to no financial safety net, with 21% of paycheck recipients reporting they have zero funds remaining after expenses each month. So what is actually happening here? There are three things I want to walk you through, because when you understand all three, the picture becomes very clear. The first thing I want to talk about is something I called lifestyle inflation. You might also have heard it being called lifestyle creep. And it is, without question, the most silent and most dangerous financial force that most people will ever deal with. Here's how it works. You get a raise, and almost immediately, sometimes even without making a conscious decision, your spending rises to match it. Maybe you upgrade your apartment. Maybe you start eating out more. Maybe you finally get that one car you've been eyeing. Maybe it is subscriptions, a gym, a meal kit service, a premium streaming bundle. Each one feels small. Each one feels deserved. And they're small individually, but together they are quietly eating every single dollar of that raise you got. There's actually a psychological term for this. It's called the hedonic adaptation, the brain's tendency to quietly normalize new circumstances. The first time you sleep in a hotel with a great mattress, it's incredible, isn't it? A week later, it's just where you sleep. The first month of a new apartment is exciting. 6 months in, it's just your apartment. And your brain starts to treat that new baseline as the minimum, not the upgrade it actually was. So what once felt like a luxury becomes a necessity. And then the next upgrade becomes the new goal. And on it goes. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, Americans were saving an average of just 3.8% of disposable income as recent as December 2024. Compare that to saving rates in the 80s or 90s, which were around 8, 10, even 12%. We are earning more now than ever and saving less than ever. And lifestyle inflation is a massive reason why. Think of it this way. If you were making $60,000 and you get promoted to $80,000, that is a $20,000 raise. After taxes, let's say you bring home an extra $1,200 a month. Now, if your spending goes up $1,200 a month, and most people it does, your financial situation has not changed at all. Not one bit. You just upgraded your lifestyle to match your income and you're back to square one. But now with a higher fixed expenses that are much harder to undo. This is a trap, and most people walk right into it because it does not feel like a trap. It feels like progress. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting, because lifestyle inflation does not happen in a vacuum. It is often fueled by something I called income creep. And this is the idea that whatever you're making right now, it never feels like quite enough because the target keeps moving. You remember thinking, if I just made $75,000, I would be fine. And then you make the $75,000 and you was fine for about 5 minutes before you start thinking, if I only make $100,000, I'll be fine. And now you make the 100,000. And now you're thinking the same thing at 150. This is not a personal failing. This is literally how the brain is wired. Researchers have a term for this, the hedonic treadmill. You keep running and the destination keeps moving. No amount of income ever feels like a rival because your expectations inflate right alongside your earnings. And social comparison makes this exponentially worse. When your income goes up, your social circle often shifts. You're around different people with bigger homes, nicer cars, more expensive hobbies, and unconsciously, you start recalibrating what normal looks like. You're not measuring yourself against where you were anymore. You're now measuring yourself against where the people around you are. And that is an unwinnable game. Research has shown that we are unconsciously influenced by even casual acquaintances' spending habits. One study found that neighbors of lottery winners significantly increase their own visible consumption and often ends up in financial trouble trying to keep up. None of us are immune to this. And social media has poured gasoline on this fire. Now, you're not just comparing yourself to the actual neighbors anymore. You're comparing yourself to the curated, highlighted reels of thousands of people, all of whom appear to be living better than you. The vacations, the renovations, the outfits, the restaurants, the Pinterest homes. What you do not see are the credit card statements funding all of it. Goldman Sachs actually predicted that if these trends continue, 55% of US workers will be living paycheck to paycheck by 2033. So this is not getting any better on its own. The income creep cycle looks like this. You earn more, you expect more, you spend more. You need more income to sustain it, and the cycle continues. The finish line is always just out of reach. Now, the third piece of the puzzle is what I call the psychological spending. And this is one of the most financial content glosses over. And I think this is a mistake because for a lot of people, this is actually the root cause. Psychological spending is spending that is driven not by the need or even by genuine want, but by emotions. Stress, boredom, reward, avoidance, status anxiety. You have a terrible week at work and you buy something to make you feel better. You hit a goal and you treat yourself to something that was not in your budget. You're anxious about money and so you spend money, which temporarily quiets that anxiety even while making the actual situation worse. There's also a very powerful narrative a lot of high earners carry. I work hard, I deserve it. And look, they're not wrong. They do work hard. But that phrase, I deserve it, has probably cost the average person tens of thousands of dollars in unnecessary spending over a lifetime. The dinner to celebrate the deal, the weekend trip after you finish a big project, the luxury item that signals to yourself and others that you have arrived. Each one feels entirely justified in the moment, and each one is money that did not go towards debt, savings, or building an actual financial freedom. According to a 2025 Harris Poll survey, among households earning $200,000 or more, 64% has used reward points to pay for essentials. 50% had used buy now, pay later for purchases under $100. And 46% had relied on credit cards just to get by. The chief strategy officer for Harris Poll said that the data shows that even high earners are financially anxious, living the illusion of affluent while privately juggling credit cards, debt, and survival strategies. There is something else worth naming too, which is the connection between income and the fixed cost anxiety. High earners tend to carry larger debt balances like mortgages, car payments, student loans, credit cards, and because they expect their income to keep growing, they make financial commitments based on that expectation. It works fine until it doesn't. A job loss, a health issue, an economic downturn, and suddenly that lifestyle that felt sustainable is now a financial emergency. According to a 2024 Federal Reserve survey, a high-income household reported the greatest increase in anxiety about debt and missed payments, higher than lower-income household. They have more to lose, and the stress of maintaining that lifestyle is real. So you have these three forces working together: lifestyle inflation, income creep, and psychological spending, and they are all pulling in the same direction. They all make it easier to spend and harder to save. They all keep you locked in cycles, and they get stronger, not weaker, as the income increases, unless you actively build systems to counteract them. Which brings me to what I actually want to talk about, because this video is not just about telling you what is wrong. It's about giving you a way out. And before I get into the solution, I want to acknowledge something because I think it would be dishonest not to. Yes, a lot of what I have been talking about is behavioral. It's about choices and habits and psychology. But the economy we're living in right now is genuinely harder than it used to be. And I do not want to minimize that. Between 2020 and 2024, food prices rose about 25%, and the rent jumped more than 20% in many cities, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Consumer prices were still running at 2.7% inflation at the end of 2025, and that is on top of years of cumulative price increases that wages simply have not kept pace with. We're also living through what economists call the K-shaped recovery, where higher income households have seen wage growth accelerated while lower to middle income households continue to fall further behind. According to a Bank of America economist, the growth between higher and lower income wage growth is the highest we've seen since 2016. So yes, this is harder. The cost of housing, childcare, healthcare, transportation, these are not discretionary spending you can just cut. They are the baseline. And for a lot of households, that baseline has gotten dramatically more expensive while income has not kept pace. I say this not to make you feel helpless because you're not. But I want you to know that if you are struggling despite doing a lot of things right, the environment is genuinely working against you right now. And the solution has to account for the reality. All right, let's talk about what actually works. I have talked in previous videos about different budgeting approaches, but for the specific problem we are discussing today, where your spending keeps expanding to meet your income, there's a method I keep coming back to because it directly attacks the root cause of the cycle. I call it the carryover method. Here's the core idea. Instead of building a budget around what you're allowed to spend, you flip the script and build a budget around what you're committed to saving and investing first, and then you live on whatever is left. Intentionally, every single month, you pay yourself first, and everything else is the remainder. That might sound like a version of the pay yourself first because it is, in a way. But the carryover piece is what makes it different, and here's what I mean. When you get paid, the first thing that happens is money moves automatically into the account you have designated for your financial goals. Emergency fund, retirement contribution, debt accelerator, whatever your current priorities are. These transfers are automated. They happen before you even see the money in your checking account, before you had a chance to spend it, justify it, or tell yourself you will catch up the next month. What is left after those transfers is your spending account. That is the number you live on, not your gross income, not your net income, the number after your goals have been funded. Now, here's the carryover piece. At the end of each month, whatever is left in your spending account carries over to the next month. You do not spend it down just because it's there. You let it accumulate, and over time, that carryover balance becomes a buffer, a cushion that means you're never scrambling the last week before payday. And here's why this is so powerful, specifically for the paycheck to paycheck cycle we have been talking about. It makes lifestyle inflation structurally harder to do because your financial commitments are already accounted for before you ever get to the spending side of the equation. You cannot inflate your lifestyle into money that's already gone. The system limits the damage that your psychology can do. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking right now. That sounds great, but I'm barely making it as is. I do not have anything left over to save. I hear you. I really do. Specifically in this economy where the margins are tight and the cost of just existing feels like it gets higher every month. But here's what I want you to understand. You do not have to start big. You just have to start. Even $5 a paycheck counts. I'm serious, $5. Because what you're building is not just a savings balance. You are building a habit. You are training your brain to treat a savings as non-negotiable. And once that habit is wired in, increasing it becomes natural. You go from 5 to 10, 10 to 25, and 25 to whatever fits your life. Think about it this way. If you grab a cup of coffee on your way to work a few times a week, skipping one of those runs and transferring that $5 or $6 to your savings account is a start. That is not sacrifice. That is a decision. And that decision made consciously starts to change the relationship you have with your money. The goal is not perfection. The goal is direction. Even $5 moved automatically and intentionally is $5 your spending account never sees. And over time, that momentum compounds. Not just financially, but psychologically too. You start to feel like someone who saves. And that feeling changes everything. Now, this is the part that most people miss. When you get a raise, before you change a single spending habit, you revisit your automatic transfer. You increase them first, even if it's just 50% of the raise going to savings and 50% going towards your lifestyle. That is already infinitely better than the default, which is zero going to savings and 100% going to your lifestyle. This one decision made once in a moment of clear-headed intention can do more for your financial future than 100 small daily spending decisions, because you have removed the willpower component. You do not have to talk yourself into savings after a raise. The system does it automatically. According to research cited by Vanguard and the CFPB, automatic savings increased long-term savings rate by 40%. The behavioral hurdle of having to consciously transfer money is eliminated. The money never lands in your checking account, so you never feel like you are missing it. So let me give you the framework. Every month, when your pay hits, here's the order of operation. So let me start with step one. Your automated savings and investment transfers go immediately. They're non-negotiable. Start where you are, even if it's just $5 or $10. Automate it and treat it like a bill that you cannot skip. Now, step two. Your fixed necessities come out of what is left. Your rent or mortgage, utilities, transportation, insurance, minimum debt payment. These are all costs you cannot change overnight. So know the exact numbers. Step three, what remains is your variable spending, your food, entertainment, clothing, subscription, all the nice to haves. This is where you have actual flexibility. This is where intentional choices make a real difference. And step four, at the end of the month, what is left stays. It carries over. You let that buffer grow until it reaches at least one full month of living expenses, then two, and so on. This is your insulation from your paycheck to paycheck cycle. Once you have it, an emergency does not spiral. A slow month does not derail you. Now you can do this on a tight income when the cost of living has squeezed your margin. Now, can you do this on a tight income when your cost of living has squeezed your margin? It is not easy, but it is possible. And the starting point might just be getting honest visibly into where your money is going, and you can make one or two small cuts. That's it. Not a perfect budget, just awareness, and one change. From there, you just build. I want to close this with something that might be the most important part of this whole video. All the systems in the world only works if you actually believe that you deserve financial stability more than you deserve the appearance of financial success. And for a lot of people, especially high earners who have their identity tied to their income and their lifestyle, that is actually a harder shift than you may think. If your spending is connected to stress relief, to reward, to status, to self-worth, no budget is going to hold long-term until you start to untangle these connections. You do not have to go to therapy for this, although that certainly might help. You can start just by asking yourself one question before a non-essential purchase. Am I buying this because I genuinely want it and it fits my plan? Or am I buying it because of how I feel right now? That pause, even for just 5 seconds of honest and self-reflection, is more powerful than most financial advices you will ever receive. The goal is not to live like you make nothing. The goal is to stop being surprised by your own bank account, to end every month with something left over instead of a deficit, to have your next paycheck already spoken for before it arrives, to have money that is actually yours, not just temporarily passing through. That is what financial stability actually feels. Not a number, a feeling that you are okay, that you have options, that a bad month does not mean a crisis. And I promise you, it is possible. You do not have to have it all figured out. You just have to take one step, even a small one, and start there. If this video helped you see your situation a little differently, go ahead and check out the next video coming on your screen. I think you will find it just as useful. And if you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss what's coming up next. I'll see you in the next one.